9 hikers went into the frozen Ural Mountains, and weeks later, what was found made even seasoned investigators go quiet. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass incident of 1959, a mystery that still refuses to rest. Pause. We begin in the Soviet Union, winter of 1959. In the city of Sverdlovsk, at the Ural Polytechnic Institute, a group of young students planned what was supposed to be the adventure of a lifetime. Their leader was 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, calm, methodical, respected, an experienced ski tourist trusted by his peers. His team was carefully chosen, 9 hikers in total, including Igor. Most were in their early 20s, strong and highly skilled in winter expeditions. Their goal was ambitious: to reach Otort, a remote mountain in the northern Urals in the depths of winter. The route would earn them a prestigious grade III certification in ski touring the highest difficulty level of that time. They departed by train on January 23rd. The journey was part challenge, part celebration. They joked, they took photos, they wrote cheerful diary entries. Nothing in their words suggested fear. If anything, there was excitement. These were young people doing what they loved, confident in their abilities and in each other. But the place they were headed to had a reputation. The local Mansi people had a name for one of the nearby peaks: Mountain of the Dead. The group knew the name. They wrote it down in their notes, almost playfully. For them, it was another interesting detail in a harsh but beautiful land. On January 28th, one of the hikers, Yuri Yudin, fell ill. His health forced him to turn back. He said goodbye to his friends, believing they would soon return with stories and laughter. It would be the last time he saw them alive. From that point on, we rely on what the hikers left behind: their photos, their journals, and what was later found in the snow. The first signs of tension appear in their records: a sudden worsening of the weather, strong wind, poor visibility, deep snow. On January 31st, they reached the edge of a highland area. They prepared for the final ascent, leaving some supplies in a cache to collect on their return. Their last camp with a sense of order and comfort. The next day, February 1st, they began climbing the slopes of Khalat Siakal, the Mountain of the Dead. Instead of going around the mountain into the shelter of the valley, they moved up onto its open face. Some believe it was a navigational error in low visibility. Others think Igor decided to camp on the slope to practice under extreme conditions. The last photos show them setting up their tent on an exposed hillside, the wind howling, snow sweeping across the open ground. They took off their skis. They pitched one large tent for all 9. They cooked a simple meal. They wrote one last time. Their final diary entries were calm, light-hearted, full of jokes about cold socks, frozen boots, and clumsy moments. Nothing foreshadowed what would happen next. When the hikers failed to return on schedule, at first, no one panicked. Delays in winter were common. A few more days, people said. The group is experienced. They'll be fine. But the days kept passing. Their families began to worry. Their friends at the institute grew restless. By February 20th, search teams were finally sent out. Students, volunteers, and later, the Soviet military. They spread across the snowy wilderness, calling out names that never answered. On February 26th, they found the tent. It was half buried in snow, standing on the slope of Khalat Siakal. The fabric was damaged, partly collapsed under the weight of winter. What disturbed the searchers was not just that the tent was empty. It was how it had been left. Inside, they found boots, warm clothing, jackets, gloves, provisions, everything the group would have needed to survive the night. The tent's entrance was closed, yet the fabric had been cut open from the inside, as if those inside had chosen or been forced to leave in haste. Footprints led away from the tent, not the deep, confused marks of a panicked stampede, but a line of tracks made by people walking. Some of the prints appeared barefoot, others in just socks, a few in one shoe. The trail went down the slope, toward a forest about a kilometer away. Then, as the wind and snow took over, the footprints faded. At the edge of the forest, beneath a tall cedar tree, the searchers made the next discovery: remains of a small fire, signs that at least some of the hikers had tried to keep warm. 2 bodies were found there, lightly dressed for the conditions, without the gear they had left in the tent. Nearby, branches were broken high up, as if someone had climbed the tree, perhaps searching for the tent or for help. As the search widened, 3 more of the group were found between the tent and the forest. They were spaced out, as though they had tried to crawl or stagger back up the slope. Still too far from safety, for nearly 2 months, the remaining 4 hikers were missing. Winter closed in again. The snow grew deeper and heavier. When the thaw finally came, searchers returned. In a ravine further into the woods, they found the last 4 members of the group. They were deeper in the snow, as if they had taken shelter, trying to survive a little longer. When investigators examined the scene, they were faced with a puzzle that made no sense. Why had 9 experienced hikers abandoned a secure tent on a freezing night without proper clothing? Why had they cut their way out from the inside instead of using the front entrance? Some of the hikers showed signs of severe internal injuries without visible external damage. Others had conditions linked to extreme cold. One was missing part of her tongue, a detail that would later fuel wild speculation, though experts suggested natural causes after weeks in the elements. The official investigation struggled to find a clear answer. There were no signs of a fight with outsiders, no clear indication of an attack by wildlife. The group's belongings and diaries suggested no conflict among them. In the end, Soviet authorities closed the case with a vague conclusion. They said the hikers died due to a compelling natural force, a phrase that explained nothing and left everything open. Families were left with more questions than answers. Friends who had shared classrooms and jokes with the group now had to speak of them in the past tense. Their final photos were printed and passed around, haunting in their ordinariness. Over time, the site where their tent had stood was given a new name, Dyatlov Pass, in honor of the group's leader and as a reminder of what happened there. In the years that followed, theories multiplied. Some said it was an avalanche of sudden snow pushing into their tent, forcing them to flee without time to dress. Others suggested a rare weather phenomenon, like powerful downslope winds that can make a tent collapse and the air itself feel threatening. There were ideas of infrasound low-frequency vibrations from the wind, causing panic and confusion. Ideas of secret military tests or accidental exposure to experimental weapons. Every explanation seemed to solve one part of the puzzle, but not all of it. The lack of clear answers turned the Dyatlov Pass incident into a legend. Books were written, documentaries produced. Armchair investigators studied the photos, the maps, the autopsy notes again and again. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened the case. Modern scientists used new models to test the avalanche theory. Some simulations showed that a small, delayed slide of snow could indeed injure the hikers, damage the tent, and force a hasty escape into the night. This would explain the cuts in the tent, the missing clothing, the desperate attempt to find shelter in the woods. Still, not everyone is convinced. The mystery continues to attract new theories, new debates, new voices. But the one thing that remains constant is the simple, human story at the center. 9 young people, talented, hopeful, and determined, caught in a series of events on a winter night that they could not overcome. Today, a monument stands near their final resting place. Hikers still visit Dyatlov Pass, some in search of answers, others in quiet respect. The wind over the snow sounds much the same as it did in 1959. When we talk about the Dyatlov Pass incident, it is easy to focus only on the mystery, on the unanswered questions, on the theories that try to tame the unknown. But behind every theory are 9 lives. 9 families who never saw their children come home. 9 friends whose laughter was silenced on a frozen mountainside. Maybe the real lesson of Dyatlov Pass is not just about what happened, but about what we do not and may never fully understand. Nature, especially in its harshest places, does not always reveal its secrets. Even experienced people can be overwhelmed by conditions they could not predict. And sometimes, history leaves us with gaps that no investigation can completely fill. So we are left with this: a quiet tent on a snowy slope, footprints fading into the dark, 9 hikers who set out chasing a challenge and an adventure, who faced something they could not control, and whose story still echoes, more than 60 years later, in every cold wind that passes through the Ural Mountains. And as we listen to that wind, we remember their names. We remember their courage. And we accept that some places and some nights will always remain just beyond our understanding.